About 2 weeks ago, President Bola Tinubu refused to withdraw for further consultation 4 tax reform bills sent to the National Assembly in the wake of heated public criticisms led by the 36 state governors and on the recommendation of the National Economic Council. The president, however, believed that the legislative process, which has already begun, provides an opportunity for inputs and necessary changes without withdrawing the bills from the National Assembly. The 4 bills include the Nigeria Tax Bill, the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. We're now being joined by Matthew Gbonjubola, who is Coordinating Director, Compliance and Enforcement Group at Federal Inland Revenue Service, to discuss the new tax regime, the controversy over it, getting stakeholders to buy into it, and its likely impact on the economy. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Good afternoon.
Okay, can you tell us a bit more about the new tax regime and why it's necessary at this time?
Thank you very much. The new tax proposed regime, because it's not yet a new regime, is still a proposal before the National Assembly, is very important and necessary now for many reasons. Number one is the fact that the landscape for businesses have changed. Most of the laws that we currently operate with were made many decades ago. I think some were as far back as 1939. The laws we use in taxing companies operating in the upstream petroleum industry, for example, was made in 1957. So they are no longer fit for the modern day business environment. Number two reason why it's important that we have this change is that when you look at the revenue available to the 3 tiers of government for the past 5 to 6 years, tax revenue has been providing over 65%, which means that our most sustainable source of funding for our government is taxation. And therefore, we need to modernize the way we do taxation, including the various rules that are applied therein. I think thirdly, a very important reason why we needed to do a modernization now is that most low-income earners, as of today, are paying a lot of taxes under the current legislations. And so everyone recognizes that the need for a low-income earner to pay little or no taxes. So these are things that have been put together in the current bills that are before the National Assembly, in summary. Thank you.
And some of these new tax regime proposals are quite interesting. There are plans to reimburse businesses 100% of their VAT paid on assets and services to reduce the overall cost for businesses, potentially helping to curb inflation. Is this enough for struggling businesses at this time?
Thank you very much. And that's also one of the reasons why we are having these proposals. Currently, many businesses are actually reporting losses, and that is because they are made to bear taxes that ordinarily they should not bear. So when you pay VAT to acquire business assets, and you use those assets to earn revenue, and that revenue is liable to VAT, the acceptable practice all over the world is that the input taxes you have paid upon the assets you are using for the business should be recoverable. Under the current law, taxes paid on such assets are not recoverable. And it is now proposed, in order to make businesses to survive, to also allow them to thrive and be able to have employment more for our citizens, to be able to produce more, to say, okay, let's now give businesses the opportunity for them to recover those taxes that have been paid in the process of producing their goods and services. All of us want our businesses to thrive, and also for them to create employment and for economy to become buoyant. And these are steps that are necessary for us to take. And under the current legislations, we cannot have them. And that is why we have them in the proposed legislations.
So how inclusive, was the process leading up to the various proposals? Were they made in conjunction with business owners, potential investors, and other stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. You may recall that over a year ago, the president appointed Mr. Taiwo Yedele to chair a presidential committee to look into the review, the restructuring, and the modernization of the tax system. And this committee, comprising of eminent Nigerians, we have people from the academia, from businesses, from government, or even including students. Everyone was involved in that process. And so all of these that you have seen in the 4 bills are the products of the deliberation of almost 1 year of that committee. And it may also interest you that the committee engaged in serious engagement with different strata of the society, the traditional rulers, the academias, the governors of various states, businesses, different interest groups, including labor, in the process of coming up with what we now have, which has now been codified into the proposed legislation. So yes, it was very inclusive.
I want to talk about some other tax reforms that were discussed in this, even though we know that it's going to be heading to the National Assembly. That is 10 of the new bills. Another one that caught my eye was the 25% tax rate for individuals earning over 100 million naira or monthly. My question is about the implementation of such, knowing that this tax bracket are the rich and the powerful, and sometimes the politicians themselves. Is this, do you anticipate any pushback or changes?
I think the starting point for us is to understand 2 things. Number 1, the natural law of nature is that the strong should help the weak, the rich should help the poor. And so, with that in mind, it then becomes what is reasonable, that people with low income should pay less tax, and people with higher income should pay more tax. This is what is called progressive system of taxation all over the world. And so, if the rich have more, then they should pay more. And that is what has informed the proposal before the National Assembly to reduce the tax burden for the lower income people and to increase the tax burden for the higher income bound people. And so, as to implementation, yes, implementation will not be a problem because the various tax authorities in the states, and including the Federal Revenue Service, are already prepared for this, and everyone is involved, even in drafting the law.
So how will these proposed reforms, affect businesses, especially SMEs? Also, what about the average Nigerian, the employed Nigerian? Will his or her payee tax increase?
It depends for employees. Any one individual who earns 1.5 million in a month or less is going to pay less tax under the proposed bills than that person is currently paying now. And for those higher bound earners, for those who earn 5, 10, 20 million per month, they will pay more. Now, as to small and medium-sized businesses, for them, it is all relief. For example, small businesses now will pay income tax at 0%. That means they will not pay income tax at all because their rate is 0. And also, for VAT compliance, they are also exempt from charging VAT on their own services. So they are going to be able to attract more buyers to themselves. So when you look at it, all in all, for small and medium scale businesses, they are going to enjoy a lot of relief in the proposed legislation.
Well, it was great having this discussion with you. Thank you so much, Matthew Olusanya Gbonjubola, for having this discussion with us here on Newsday.